veterinarians and our vet techs. Norm Ream, please come join me. I'd also like Mike Nelson, who's a committee member and a kennel master of the Dogs Project, to come join me. We're going to struggle through the list, so cut us some slack. And take all the damn time.
Good morning. My name is Norman Ream. I was a scout dog handler with the 42nd Scout Dogs, 101st Airborne, 1969-1970. My dog's name was Cherokee, who was the old dogs and the young dogs. They will always remember their four-legged partner. So let me get this thing started, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order. My best friend, Peter John Pulaski, KIA, 4 January 1970. Earhart Jimmy Adams, Robert Paul Ahern, Dale Robert Alcorn, Richard Michael Amick, William Allison Anderson, Robert Dale Armstrong, Joshua Abraham Atkins III, Donald Lee Baker, Gary Paul Baker, Lindsay David Baldoni, oh boy, Richard Michael Baniski, I guess he was just called Ski, Earl Dwayne Barkley, Richard Maurice Beauregard, James Harold Beaver, Terrence Daniel Beck, Gary Evans Beasley, Peter Klaus Behrens, Robert Winslow Belcher, Mark Wayne Bell, John Willie Bennett, James Maynard Berg, Howard Billy, Arthur Dennis, George Michael Bavick Jr., James Everett Blau, Charles Douglas Blair, Michael James Boost, who was with my unit, the 42nd Scout Dogs, Stephen Wesley Bowman, James Boyd, James Robert Boyer, thank you, Willie Bozier Jr., Robert William Breed, Martin Earl Brophy, Charles Paul Brown, Walter D. Brown, Keith Charles Buckingham, Alden John Bullwinkle, Hilburn M. Burdett Jr., Jimmy Ray Burke. Mike?
Good morning, I'm Mike Nelson, retired Senior Master Sergeant from the Air Force. I was with the 432nd Security Police Squadron at Udorn Air Force Base, Thailand. Kenneth George Burlock, Jr., Archie Burnett, Jr., Karubo James, Douglas Michael Kane, Anthony Lauren Camp, William Ladd Campbell, Joseph A. Carinci, Melvin Carrillo, Merrill Keith Carter, Russell Leonard Castle, Ronald Lee Chisholm, Walter Levon Clark, Robert Cloakes, Darrell Lee Colford, Stephen Edward Collier, Michael Lee Conklin, Jack William Connor, Ralph Wilson Connors Jr., Jack Lee Connors, Edward Erlin Cox Jr., Bobby Dean Crawford, Gordon Lee Crawford, Clarence Craighead, William Thomas Cumby, Gordon Leroy Courier Jr., Christopher Zeno Zarnota, Abram Earl Davis, Alan Eunice Davis, Elijah Lamar Davis, George Douglas Dietrich, Kenneth John Dell, Gary Jean Dietrich, Randy Eugene Dillander, Richard Albert Doria, John Francis Doyle, Michael James Drobina, Thomas Drum, Charles Douglas Drysdale, Lonnie Joseph Ducat Jr., Philip Randall Duff, Douglas Ovale Duke. John.
I am John Hemp. I am an Air Force sentry dog handler stationed at Ton Son Nhut Air Base in the Republic of Vietnam. William Martin Dunning, Robert William Elliott, Russell Martin Erickson, Lawrence Allen Esterly, George F. Eubanks, Ronald Lee Evans, Marshall Colin Farley, Bernard Ford, Richard Edward Ford, Gary Wayne Fox, Eugene Thomas Fraley, William George Fraser, David Michael Freeman, Jeffrey Alexander Freeman, John Dennis Frepon, Gerald W. Fritz, Gary Leroy Fuller, Stanley Carl Fuller, Claude Joseph Gaspard Jr., Jerry Guy Gilbertson, Livingston Glenn, William Roger Goodlock, Billy Monroe Green, Michael A. Grieve, William Donald Griffin II, William E. Groves, Dallas George Grundy, Theodore Louis Giovesi, Raymond Draper Hales, Jesse Earl Harris, and the only dog handler to ever receive
This is in honor of, Robert Hartsock, the only canine handler to receive the Medal of Honor. There is a special pedestal, Fort Benning, Georgia, where we have our memorial at Sacrifice Field in honor of him.
Robert Willard Hartsock. David Lee Hatcher. Patrick Lee Henshaw. Victor Reyes Hernandez. Larry David Hicks. Luis Hilario Padilla. Richard Michael Hilt. Wayne Bizzle Holland. Glenn Brian Holly. Herschel Kyle Holt.
Dennis Carl Hoppo. James Ray Howard. Mark Thomas Howard. William M. Huberty. Edward Cowart Hughes III. Wilhelm S. Herxman Jr. And my brother, forgive me for butchering your name. Eloa Falagufula. Elmer Glenn Ireland. Clayton Dean Jenkins. Stephen Lee Jenkins. James Jinks. Stephen Edward Jesco. Richard Kenneth Jokin. Arnold Edward Johnson. Carl Irving Johnson. Freddie Lee Johnson. Herbert Burton Johnson. James Allen Johnson. Larry Lee Johnson. Ronald Dean Corral. Andrew John Kiefhaber. Goldsby Kimbrough. Alexander King. John William Cobellin II. George Kenneth Kuhn. John Allen Kufner. Lloyd Martin Kuhn. Anthony Edmund Coons. Robert Thompson Legotsky. David Alfred Land. Richard Arthur Lane. Edward Lester Lawton. Robert Normand LeBron. Edward Gilbert Lee. Frederick Richard Levins. Dan Victor Lindholm. Stephen Lee Lindsay. Joseph Price Lipton. Harlan Nathan Lockhart. Joel Conrad Loftus.
Dennis W. London. Gary Vaughn Levitt. William Wayne Lumsden. David Byron Magruder. Elmer Wayne Mehuron. John Montague Mansfield. Joseph Allen Maresco. Paul LaFontaine Marchand. James Paul Markey Jr. Rodney Elmer Marfuno Jr. Clifford Wayne Marshall. Mark Dwayne Marshall. Kenneth Martin. Juan Patricio Martinez. Benjamin H. Mason Jr. Ronald James Mattel. Paul Edward Matson. Walter Lawrence Moore, Robert Walter May, Joseph Mark Mazzone, Glenn Weldon McCarty, Gary Richard McFall, Edward Charles McGrath, Donald William McIntosh, James Bruce McLaughlin, Lawrence James Merschel, Leo Roland Meyer, James Albert Michael, Timmy Larry Miller, Rodney Kenneth Mills, William Andrew Montano, James John Morrison, Martin M. McGovern, Michael R. Munch, Jose Munoz, Harry Walter Murray, Richard Vaughn Myers, Tim Edwin Newell, Peter Joseph Nicolini, Robert Norman Norris, David Allen Nudeberg.
Joseph Anthony Nuzinski, Robert Larry Oakes, David James Ohm, John Paul Olmsted, Charles David Orsua, Gilbert Gonzalez Palacio, Irving Guion Parks, Carter Parker Jr., Billy Joe Parrish, David Howard Payne III, Robert Paul Payne, Terry John Payne, Marvin Robert Pierce, Harry Thomas Peterson, John Michael Biasecki, Oscar Wayne Pierce, Paul Wandling Planbeck Jr., Ernest Melving Plattner, Leon Lavelle Poland Jr., Richard Charles Porter, Thomas Pretter, Peter Pulaski Jr., Thomas Wayne Quinn, Michael James Randolph, Gary Allen Rathburn, Billy Harrison Ratliff, William Clayton Ray, Robert David Rhodes, James Rivera, Virgil Jesse Roberts, Charles John Robinson, Jose Antonio Rojas, John Howard Roth, Michael Thomas Rowe, Charles H. Sandberg, David Brennan Shackner, Robert Anthony Schmidt, Dennis Robert Schosow, Richard Michael Schwab, Leroy Floyd Shiska, Dave Russell Scott.
Pete Sproul Segundo, James Michael Selix, Paul Roy Severson, William Charles Sheldon, Bobby James Shelton, Raymond Andrew Shepard, Ronald Eugene Shepard, Edward Monroe Simpson, William Jess Sims, Gary Kenneth Smith, Michael Francis Smith, Ronald C. Smith, Stephen J. Smith, Winfred Lee Smith, Robert Jean Smoot, Jose Soto Concepcion, John Paul Southwick, Max Ray Spangler, Daniel Eugene Spencer Jr., Raymond Steptoe, Alan McDonald Sturdy, Donald Sherrill Sullivan, Jeremiah Joseph Sullivan, James Michael Sunday, Herbert Hoover Sweat Jr., Theodore A. Sweat, George Tallman, Robert Joseph Toronto, Mark Randall Taylor, Joseph Allen Turinsky, Michael I. Thibodeau, James C. Tosh III, James Michael Triplett, John Leroy Truesdale, William Joseph Van Gorder, Michael Anthony Venkoski, Rex Allen Vogelpole, Larry Jonathan Waddell, Danny Edward Ward, David James Ward, Howard Lee Webb.
Vernon E. Wetham, Garson Franklin White, John Oliver White, Alfred Everts Whitehead, Robert Eugene Whitten, Eric Bernard Wickenberg, Richard Daniel Winningham, Robert Helm Wood, Michael Joseph Yeager, Lawrence Wayne Yoakum, John Michael Young, (226) United States military canine dogs lost in action. Something hasn't changed in 50 years. When the crap starts, you can count your friends on one hand. And one of the friends that always shows up is our Brothers of Oz. No questions, no hesitation. Get off the truck and get going. Today I have asked Warrant Officer 2 Finlay Steele to join us in reading the names of the fallen Australian dog handlers from the Vietnam War. Thank you for accommodating me.
Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity this morning to read these brothers who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Australian dog handlers killed in action, Vietnam. M. Bink, W. J. Hoban, P. E. Murray, G. R. Polglace, and N. T. Richardson. Total Australian canines killed in Vietnam were 13. Thanks again.
Kind of funny we talk about it's not over. We're not running out of bad guys, folks. Look over your shoulder because you're probably going to find somebody from down under got your backside covered, and I thank you again. Not bad for a tanker. We gave him the dog's disease. This is his second year with us, and please welcome Finlay Steele and his family. You'll get a chance to meet him later. At this time, it's probably a real good thing that we got some young blood in the Dogs Project, because we couldn't go another page, I don't think. I would like to introduce you to Joel Burton and to Martin Rakowski. They're going to join us for the citation of Your Generation.
Good morning, Joel Burton, retired Master Sergeant, U.S. Air Force. This is the current generation, I guess you could say. Sergeant Joshua Ashley, U.S. Marine Corps. Sergeant Aaron J. Blajo, U.S. Army. MA2 Sean Brazos, U.S. Navy. MA2 Michael Brodsky, U.S. Navy. Sergeant Adam L. Can, U.S. Marine Corps. Staff Sergeant Brian M. Carragher, U.S. Air Force. Lance Corporal Peter J. Clore, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Keaton G. Coffey, U.S. Marine Corps. Sergeant Zaniah C. Creamer, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal William H. Krause IV, U.S. Marine Corps. Staff Sergeant Christopher Diaz, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Max W. Donahue, U.S. Marine Corps. MA1 John Duwandara, U.S. Navy. Staff Sergeant Raphael A. Futrell, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal Daniel E. Holland, veterinarian, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant James R. Ide V, U.S. Army. Sergeant Dick A. Lee, Jr., U.S. Army.
My name is Martin Rakowski, retired Air Force Kennel Master. Corporal Dustin Lee, U.S. Marine Corps. Tech Sergeant Jason L. Norton, U.S. Air Force. Sergeant Mikhail L. Prince, U.S. Army. Sergeant First Class Gregory A. Rodriguez, U.S. Army. Private First Class Colton W. Rusk, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal David M. Sanka, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Jeffrey R. Stanfest, U.S. Marine Corps. Specialist Brandon K. Steffi, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Donald T. Tabb, U.S. Army. Lance Corporal Abraham Tarwell, U.S. Marine Corps. Corporal Corey D. Wines, U.S. Army. Sergeant Christopher M. Wrinkle, U.S. Marine Corps. And I'm going to add on some of our allied military working dog handlers. Senior Airman Martin Christensen, Royal Danish Air Force. Lance Corporal Kenneth M. Rowe, Royal Army, UK. Sapper Darren Smith, Royal Australian Army. Lance Corporal Liam R. Tasker, Royal Army, UK.
I appreciate you accommodating this today. We talk about Vietnam dog handlers. Today you met them. Keep them in your hearts.